We're right in the middle of a federal hiring freeze. This is impacting over 10,000 jobs, and this hiring freeze is supposed to be lifted next month. But new information is coming out. Looks like it could potentially extend. This in addition to frozen credit cards and slashed contracts. How will this impact you? Let's get into it. Okay, let's start with the big headline, the government-wide hiring freeze. According to Stephen, who's currently the acting head of the General Services Administration, GSA, he's saying that this hiring freeze is not going to be over anytime soon. In fact, he's suggesting that it's going to continue for about 9 more months, all the way to December 31st, 2025. Now, this is in direct contradiction to what we heard on January 20th. The executive order said, "I order a freeze on the hiring of federal civilian employees." It then says within 90 days a plan is to be submitted. After that, this memorandum shall expire for all executive departments and agencies with the exception of the IRS. So according to that executive order, it would place the end of the freeze around April 21st, give or take a day. But now the head of the GSA, he's saying something completely different. And if it's true, if for the remainder of this year there's a hiring freeze, that would mean roughly 10% reduction across all federal agencies. Because the attrition rate is usually around 8% or so, let's just say 10%. So if you got 2 million employees, 10% is 200,000 that are just going to leave because of attrition, because of retiring, because of better opportunities, because of death in some situations. So they're just going to naturally churn out. Now, back in 2017, President Trump froze hiring for 79 days, and it was a mess. If you were to go back further in history, you would see that Ronald Reagan had the longest hiring freeze. And it's the primary way that he chose to reduce the size of the federal workforce. What President Trump here is doing seems to be a little bit more aggressive. It's a 3-pronged approach, right? So you have the probationary employees, getting rid of them. Now, they've been reinstated, but the intent was to get rid of them. And then after that, you have the reduction in force. That's going to force layoffs. And then the third prong would be the attrition that's naturally going to occur as this freeze is in place. Why the change? Well, it's probably tied to the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. So the question is he talking about his own agency? Is he just talking about GSA? Or is he talking about the 400 other agencies that exist in the federal government? And another interesting thing that happened recently, they had a town hall. So a question came up about, is DOGE at the GSA? Now, there's reports that DOGE is over there. But Stephen, he's saying the contrary. He says he's leading the show. DOGE isn't there. And I believe this speaks to a larger strategy, or shall I say, a change in strategy. They want to downplay the role in DOGE because it's getting a lot of negative attention from the public and from the courts. So they're trying to make DOGE almost invisible and have the agency head take all the responsibility for any changes that are happening within their agency. So DOGE might come in there and say, hey, you need to cut probably 20% of your workforce, but that's not going to be publicized anymore. The agency head is going to go ahead and assume accountability and make the statement, right? So it's almost like, this is my opinion, but it's almost like DOGE is on the inside behind the curtain and speaking the words into the leadership, and then leadership projects it for the public. That way it's more digestible for people to understand and agree with. If the hiring freeze really is extended to the end of the year, that's going to be huge. You're not going to see any backfill for those vacant positions. People took the deferred resignation. People have been laid off. You're not going to see any backfill. And what you're going to see across the federal government is trying to do the same mission with way less people. They're going to be operating off of a skeleton crew. Okay, now let's pivot to some government credit card drama. According to some recent reports, agencies have frozen 200,000 purchase and travel cards. And they're not frozen in the traditional sense, but their credit limit went all the way down to $1. So you can't exceed $1, which means if you went to a 7-Eleven, you couldn't even buy a pack of batteries if you needed to. The GSA, which oversees the Smart Pay program, says it's about reining in unchecked spending. In 2024, 4.5 million Smart Pay cardholders racked up nearly $40 billion across 90 million transactions. That's enough to buy or at least control a small country. It's a lot of money. And by reducing the limit to $1, they're going to be saving quite a bit of money. But the GSA can't legally force other agencies to cap their cards at $1. They're just asking nicely at this point. They've sent about 11 memos out to agencies, and they're asking to cut the total number of cardhold users and how much they're spending. Let's take the Department of Veteran Affairs, for example. The VA has something like 19,000 purchase cards, and the workforce is about 500,000. So that's a lot of people where you're buying supplies and you're getting resources in order for their offices to function properly. The VA spends about $6 billion a year on these cards. So the GSA, what they wanted is they wanted them to cut that number down to 500. So let's do the math. 479,000 employees, 500 cardholders. That's about one cardholder for every 958 people. So that's about one person responsible for every 1,000 people within the agency. The VA said, nope, we're not doing that. We'll review how we're doing things currently, but we need to get supplies. We need purchases to be made. We can't just operate at a standstill. We need the money to continue to circulate. That's a smart move because $6 billion in healthcare spending, that's not pocket change. They're not going to jeopardize the veterans' well-being and health based on this tug of war going back and forth. And it shows you that the freeze is more than just hiring. It's about how an agency operates on a day-to-day basis. Stephen also told the GSA employees that the GSA is now going to be required to do a lot more spending on behalf of other agencies. So their current workload really is going to quadruple their responsibility. This is going to cover agencies like the Office of Personnel Management, the Education Department, the Small Business Administration, and HUD. He's also claimed that they've cut $50 billion in wasteful contract ceiling value. That saves a total of $20 billion. But the details really aren't there for the average American citizen to go through line by line and say, oh, wow, this is the impact. You saved $5 billion here, and this is what you had to give up. Because usually you have to give something up in order to save millions. And in this case, it's billions. We do not see the ramifications or the impact of these cuts, not yet. And then there's the real estate purge. GSA slashing half of its government-wide property portfolio. They've sold or listed 32 properties that were worth a total of $185 million. And they've also canceled leases of over 600 vacant offices. So this saves $500 million. But some of those offices, they were Social Security offices. They were veterans offices, right? So when you remove Social Security offices, you really impact that area because some of those individuals, they're not going to travel further. Not everything can be done online. And because of the recent ruling, you definitely can't use your phone now to access your benefits, so you're stuck online. But there's some services, like if you were to set up a child with an account for the very first time, that can't be done online. You have to walk into a physical office. GSA even put their own GSA headquarters on the non-core asset list, and then they pulled it back. They were too quick. With the click of a mouse, they made a mistake. They had to take it back. Interestingly, the Government Accountability Office said that past freezes didn't save money. It just messed up the agency's missions. That's the whole point though, right? To save money. If you're not saving taxpayers money, why would you freeze federal hiring? So some of the reasons it didn't work in the past, well, it includes a hiring freeze doesn't eliminate the need for work. Also, you have increased turnover and morale problems, and agencies hire temporary or contract workers at higher rates, offsetting any supposed savings. So what does all this mean to you? If you're a federal employee right now, you're beyond stress. And the workload that you had last year, well, that just increased by 25 to 50%. You're doing more with less, and they're expecting a lot more out of you. If you're somebody who was looking at maybe getting a government career, being a public servant, well, now you're having second thoughts. And in some situations, you might not even be able to do it this year. You're going to have to wait and see. And if you're a taxpayer, you're either cheering for these savings or you're bracing for the potential chaos that's coming. There is some good news in all of this, though, and that is 25,000 federal workers, they received their job back. So people that were kicked to the curb illegally, which is what judges are saying, they're getting paychecks once again. So now they don't have to worry about putting food on their table and helping their family out. So that's happening across multiple agencies. If you want to learn more about that, check this video out next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.